All right, it is that time once again. Look, college football on this Friday night. Happy Friday to everybody from Awesemo.com, to all our chat members. I see everyone in there. This is College Football DFS Live Before Lock. I am Ben Reslett. That is Matt Kajeski. You guys know the drill. 3 games on the slate, so that means we are here to break it down. One big game, a couple other games, Matt. A lot to get to. How you feeling on this Friday night?
I'm feeling really good. I'm excited to watch our Terps. I'm going to call them our Terps because we keep betting them.
Turtle power. It is my night to get revenge on the Hawkeyes. We're going to get to that in a little bit. But before we do, you know where we're going to start with our friends at Prize Picks, who have been offering daily prop-based contests all year. And if you haven't been over there, they want to help you get started. They're offering a fantastic deposit bonus. If you're unfamiliar, all you're doing over there, you're picking 2, 3, 4, or 5 players available on the board, and you're going to decide whether they go over or under a projected score. Say you pick 5 guys, you get them all right, you're going to get upwards of 10x your entry fee. And it's not just college football. If this is not your thing, but it should be. You've got the NBA, you've got NFL, you've got baseball, any sport that is available, they're going to offer, no doubt about it. Download in the App Store or on Google Play. Make that first deposit using the promo code Awesemo. You're going to get an instant deposit match of up to $100. No better time than to do it right now. A couple that struck my eye, and it's going to filter into these games. I'm going Raheem Jarrett. His prop was at 62.5 receiving yards. I think Maryland's going to be able to throw the ball tonight. What do you think about the alpha receivers for Maryland?
I think they're in an underrated spot against Iowa, who hasn't exactly been tested through the air. So I think that's a spot you can certainly look over as well. I do like that. And their props don't really make sense when you compare them to Tagovailoa's. Even within the site, he's at 271.5. And all of the targets are going to go through Demas and Jarrett. So that's one I do agree with you on.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to talk about it. If you add up their 2 props, you're at 149 yards. Where's the rest of that production coming from Tagovailoa? It's got to come from them. They are both true alpha receivers. So I am with you there. Another spot that I looked at, I'll never take an opportunity to pass up on ripping on Spencer Petras. Under 1.5 passing touchdowns for him. I don't even care if they're trailing, and I hope they are. I just don't see that happening. I really have no confidence in him. He's played better at moments this year. I'll give him credit for that. But at the same time, I'm going to short Iowa's passing game any chance I get.
I like that one too. You know me, I'm not a Petras fan. He's been a struggle through the air. One I really like, and it's come up a little bit, was Tyler Algier for BYU. He's now at 95.5. You could have got this at 91, but Utah State's allowing over 200 rushing yards per game to FBS opponents, and they're just going to feed him. He sort of separated himself from Lopini Katoa too.
Got ample opportunities on these 3 games to make some good prize picks, capture some value. We're going to be talking about that throughout the show. So you got Jarrett, you got Petras, you've got BYU's running game. I'm down for all of that. Let's start before we dive into the games, though. Just injuries in general. Chad already asked about Hall. That's an unknown, correct?
Yeah, it is. And I really have no idea if he's playing or not. There's like a lot of conflicting reports on Twitter right now. And I really just don't know what to make of them.
Yeah, I've seen you in the Twitter streets today, not knowing what to make of reports. So it can get a little dangerous out there.
This one's tough, man. I haven't seen a verified report yet.
We're only about those blue check marks. What about Stokes for Tulsa? Where is he at?
He's expected to play.
Okay. Well, let's dive into it. We've only got 25 minutes. We got 3 games. We're going to be just fine. We've got Houston. We've got Tulsa. This is the first game up. Tulsa's a 3.5 point home favorite. Over under sitting around 54. When you look at this game, you got Dana Holgorsen, Clayton Tune at the helm. What do you make of this Houston Cougars team? Of the 6 teams, kind of where do they fall? At the top, in the middle, at the bottom?
I think they're all kind of middling today. There isn't one game that like downright separates itself from the pack. I think the BYU game is the best, but even with that, it's not far and away better. So this Houston versus Tulsa game, it's middling. The worst game is going to be the Iowa-Maryland game, but I still think there's pieces there. As far as Houston goes, it comes down to the status of Clayton Tune, and he's going to play, but he did suffer a hamstring injury back against Rice. And last week he came back, he played, but he didn't rush. He actually finished with -1 rushing yards on the day. And mobility's been something that's been a strength for Tune going back a couple seasons now that we've had him as the starter. He had at least 244 rushing yards in each of the last 2 seasons, which is fairly solid for a quarterback. And again, he's mobile, but he's not going to be like Lamar Jackson. If he loses that, it's going to hurt him.
When you look at the rest of this team, it's true. I think I want to just repeat that. I do think Utah State and BYU is the best game, but this is not like one total is 80 and the others are 40 and we just need to super stack. But this one I do think falls in the middle. It's a competitive spread. Both teams run a decent amount of plays. I don't see anything wrong with it, and they're pretty balanced. I think they will have some volume. So on the outside, I mean, if you want to go to tune, how do you think you construct that type of lineup?
He actually fits pretty well with the same builds you'd be using for the quarterback on the other side with Davis Brin. They're like the same price essentially. With Tune, I think you can stack him or you can run him naked because of the issues we have with the limited mobility potentially. Looking to him more in stacks, and he's pretty easy to get to. And again, even with the injury in their last game, he still threw for 257 yards through the air. So Tune did still show a ceiling through the air. I just question what he has with his legs. So today, more likely than not going to stack him.
Yeah, he's not doing literally anything on the ground. Is there anything to talk about on the ground with Houston in general?
Yeah, Mulbacar got hurt right away in the season, which was actually kind of good. And I mean, Mulbacar has been hurt, I feel like, every single year he's been there. But it allowed their freshman, Alton McCaskill, to come in and basically win the job outright. He's outcarried Taysom Henry in each of the last 2 weeks. He has been the most efficient back. It's not even really close. He is 234 yards. Henry comes in at 94. So McCaskill, however you say his name, I have never seen a Houston play this year. He's really interesting as like a GPP pivot in his price range. I think a lot of people are going to hit the Tulsa backs or pay up and try to get Goodson and some of the other alphas, but he's somebody that has a path. Again, tight spread here. So in GPPs, I think he's a good play.
On the other side of the game, this Tulsa team, I really have no idea how good they are. I actually think they're probably better than their record indicates, and they lost to an FCS school in UC Davis, but I actually like kind of what they're doing, ironically, as that is. How do you think they attack Houston? Is it going to be on the ground or is it going to be through the air?
I think it's going to be a little bit of both. They're pretty balanced overall. Pass rate 49%. So I think when they're attacking Houston, it's going to be in Houston. They're very good on defense. They haven't really shown any leaks. So I think they're going to test the waters both ways. Brin isn't mobile. He's very different, but this Tulsa offense is extremely fast. So he has been able to get over 300 yards in each of the last 2 games. He's easy to stack. They run 4 wide most plays. So I do like the passing game for Tulsa.
In the backfield, Brooks was just absolutely dominant in their last game, but do you expect more of a two-headed monster with Prince, or do you think that Brooks could be live for 20 plus carries again?
There was a report that came out after the game that Brooks had gotten, I get these two confused. It's
Prince
Brooks
is banged up.
Yes, Prince was the one that was banged up. Sorry.
Yep.
So Brooks carried 22 times when Prince was banged up, and now they're apparently closer to full health again. I think they're basically the same price. They've had the same workload except for that last game. So it's really hard to differentiate between the two. The player who's more active in the pass game is Prince. So even though he's a little bit banged up, he's the one I do favor.
On the outside, where does a guy like Josh Johnson stack up on this slate tonight?
Josh Johnson has been the wide receiver 1 with and without Keelan Stokes in the lineup. Stokes has been their number 1 receiver going back a few years now, but he got banged up in week 2, missed the last 2 games. But even in that week 1 contest, Josh Johnson out-targeted him. And he now has a 28.5% target share, averaging 86 yards, 8.8 targets per game. He's a really strong play, and he's kind of in a price point that's a little awkward. He's a little cheaper than a lot of the number 1 receivers like Nathaniel Dell on the Houston side. He's a little more expensive. The BYU receivers are more expensive. Dante Demas is a little more expensive. So if you end up falling on him, I think it's completely fine. But there are contrarian options as well. There's pay down options. So if you can't get to Josh Johnson, I think you're fine with options like Sam Crawford, Juan Carlos Santana. Each of those players has upside in this offense.
Will you go to Stokes at all?
I will not be playing Stokes tonight. He's coming off an injury and he was already ceding some snaps. I think a guy like Ezra Naylor could play a little bit more. So it's probably a situation that I will be avoiding.
I lean Tulsa in the game What do you think on the betting market, or is it just a pass at 3.5?
I will not be betting this game.
Okay. So decent game, competitive. Let's go Tulsa. I'm going to back them a little bit. Let's keep it moving. We'll circle back if we have some time at the end here. This is a game I want to talk about. We got Iowa, we got Maryland. We both have bet Maryland. Iowa's going down tonight. Could be punished. I've been punished before with this Hawkeye team, but I really do like the spot. Let's start with the visitors. I mentioned Petrus. He is you'd be lucky if he's a 0 in the rushing game if you play him. That's his ceiling, because the guy can't move whatsoever. He's just not mobile. So does that take him just immediately out of the conversation tonight?
Yes, it does. Unless you're playing the really large GPPs and you're just playing him for the sake of being contrarian, there's not really a strong argument you can make for Petrus. He's been extremely inefficient as a passer. He's non-mobile. Really hard to get to him. He's not even completing 60% of his passes, 6.4 yards per attempt. There's just so many red flags with this dude.
Before we get to Goodson, on the outside, would you look to what is their best receiver in Laporta as just kind of a one-off in other lineups, or do you think the entire Iowa passing attack is a no-go?
He's the best one, and I don't feel great about him. His price point is okay, but again, you're taking a roster spot up with Laporta in a low upside offense. I mean, he has 27 targets on the year. You look at Laporta in his price range and just targets per game, he's at 6.5. If you go down and play a guy like Juan Carlos Santana, he's averaging 7.5 at a cheaper price. They also have a better team total overall. So Laporta, I think if you're playing the Iowa stack to be contrarian, he's fine. But in that price range, there's players that just project better than him, Santana being one of them. And I mean, if you have Laporta at 46, why not just go up $300 and play Raheem Jarrett?
Yeah, these are questions that I would totally agree with. Lowest total of the 3 games, 2 at 47.5. All right. They do have Tyler Goodson, who it seems like if Iowa does win this game, they are just going to lean on their best player on offense, have him carry the ball 20, 25 times and just go that way. He can catch the ball a little bit. He's got 10 catches on the year so far. Where does he rank amongst the running backs tonight?
He's in the top 2, and it's far and away the top 2 rushers. I think you just look at the players that are going to get a massive workload. Goodson is that, and he has not been efficient this year. So far, he's averaging just 91 yards per game. He has 364 yards, and that's come on immense opportunity. It's just that they haven't been efficient. Their offensive line has taken a step back. You can also hang your hat on Goodson being involved in the pass game. He has 12 targets. So if they do fall behind, you're going to feel good about Goodson overall in your lineup.
I assume you think he's cash viable then?
Yes, I'm going to be playing him in cash.
On the other side, one of the reasons that I like Maryland in the game tonight is they're going to test Iowa, and I think in a way that really no one else has. Iowa State, who talk about gutless, just get them off the screen after what they did against Baylor, but they did not test them on the outside. Tagovailoa and these receivers absolutely will do that. You've got Demas, you've got Raheem Jarrett. I assume you're very comfortable taking Tagovailoa and both of them and just going with a Maryland stack.
I am comfortable with that, even though their team total is extremely low. There's just so much upside with this stack. All of the targets are funneled between these two guys. And I would look back to last year rather than what we have to start this year. Maryland has some competitive games. They have some non-competitive games. So these target shares are a little bit depressed. But overall, these are the 2 players receiving all the targets, playing all the snaps. That's where I would prefer to go.
So a 2-part question here with Fleet Davis in the backfield. A, what do you think of him? And B, in large field tournaments, are you comfortable putting him with Tagovailoa because he's not a 0 in the passing game and having a different type of Maryland stack?
I probably wouldn't play him with Tagovailoa in this low total. You're just giving up a lot when you do that, but he has been the lead back in competitive games. Isaiah Jacobs, Penny Boone will mix in a little bit here, but Tanfleet Davis also pretty active in the pass game. He has 14 targets there. He's not going to be played as much, just with other options like Goodson being not that much more expensive. He's only 700 more. So Tanfleet Davis, I think, is a nice GPP option. Again, a little tougher to get to him, but thankfully his work in the pass game keeps him live in all game scripts.
So looking at this Maryland team, you mentioned it's not a great implied total. They are home dogs. And even though I like them, I think you do too, it's a very, very good Iowa defense. we're still going to try to get 2 quarterbacks, I assume, in every lineup, because that is something I think everyone should be doing at all times. Is Tagovailoa potentially cash viable, or where does he rank amongst the 6?
Yeah, he's a little bit down for me. If I'm ranking them, it is going to be Jaren Hall tentatively, assuming he plays. Then it's going to be Davis Brin, followed by Clayton Tune, then Tagovailoa. And it just comes down to Tagovailoa's price. On FanDuel, he's the most expensive signal caller. And then on DraftKings, he's in a middling range of 7K, where it's a little more difficult to get to him.
A couple questions from this game before we move on. Friend of the show, GQ, would you run Goodson back if you do go to the Maryland stack?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so as well. And then is there a significant gap between Jayshon Jones and Raheem Jarrett? I would say yes.
I think there is, but that's reflected in price.
Is the Mingo news true? Well, that's another question that you'll be hearing us complain about.
Is what true?
Is the Mingo news true? I don't know. Ask Matt G. He's been on the trail all day.
I only got on the trail. People sliding in my DMs after
no respect.
After I ran my mouth on Twitter.
Well, it happens. For what it's worth, I'm a lot more worried about Ole Miss tomorrow, but we'll talk about that tomorrow. Let's talk about BYU and Utah State. We don't know. We're just going to assume that Jaren Hall is in. And if he is in, you just mentioned that you really like the spot, and it's easy to see why.
He's a great dual threat. That's the main thing. And then Utah State's defense definitely doesn't scare you at all. You look at Jaren Hall, he's banged up for sure. And there's just a lot of negative reports right now coming out about the injury. I think they're so close in salary, Jaren Hall and Baylor Romney, that is. I think you just make sure you have the flexibility in your lineup to pivot if necessary. And at the very least, like, you just eat the 300 and you move down to Romney. And that's just the way it is. As far as Jaren Hall, he already has 166 rushing yards. Again, he's been really banged up through the year too, so that's solid. He's completing 60% of his passes, 6.6 yards per attempt. He's pretty solid overall. And this is a competitive game. It's not like it's a 17-point spread here. It's inside 10. So Utah State is expecting to keep this competitive. Utah State themselves has like higher implied team totals than Maryland, than Iowa, and Houston as well. So this Utah State team, I think people are going to ignore their chances of keeping it competitive, even for the BYU side. So this is my favorite game to target. That's reflected in the total. But the BYU side, the quarterback situation is one where I'm just going to play Jaren Hall or Baylor Romney, whoever is out there.
If it is Baylor Romney, how big of an impact do you think that is to Romney on the outside or the other pass catchers for this team?
Honestly, it might be an improvement.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. Dual threat, no, but for the outside weapons, I don't think it's that big a deal.
I agree. And Baylor Romney's thrown more. Like, we're dealing with really tiny samples, both for Romney and for Jaren Hall. But like in his career, Romney's completing 68% of his passes, 9 yards per attempt. Both of those are better than Hall. I won't question Hall's mobility and his athleticism. He's the better athlete of the two, but Jaren Hall as a passer, I think he cedes a little bit to Baylor Romney.
I'm with you. All right. You mentioned at the beginning on Prize Picks, you love Algier. You think he can run wild against the Utah State defense that has really just been gutted up front. So 7,100, 9,600 over on FanDuel. Cash viable. I assume he checks that box, and he's one of the premier plays tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. He's the number one running back play. He separated himself a little bit from Lopini Katoa in their last game. He carries the ball 15 times to Katoa's 4. The game prior, 21 times to Katoa's 8. In week 2, 27 to 8. He's the back there riding. The carries overall come out to 80 to 29.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this guy, he's primed. They have a good game script. I do think this game could stay pretty close. I don't really know what to expect on Utah State. It's a team that at times they put up 48 and 49 points, not against great competition, but then they scored 3 points against Boise State. I don't know. You've got Bonner. You've got Tompkins on the outside. Talk to me about this Aggies team and who stands out as possibly big-time plays.
So they narrowed their quarterback room to basically just Bonner. He had been in a timeshare with Peasley, and now Bonner is playing like 90% of the snaps. Peasley coming in on just gadget plays, which I think is good for the overall passing upside. Bonner's stats are a little depressed. He did exit a game with an injury, but he's back now. So you're going to see him get to like 270 yards as a median projection. Sometimes he'll eclipse that. Sometimes he'll be under that. Somewhat mobile for him. he's a middling play. I think he's a little too expensive on this slate with like Tagovailoa cheaper than him, Bryn and Toon cheaper than him. But in stacks, he's certainly live.
Yeah. So when you're looking at potential stacks tonight, team stacks, I'm saying you've mentioned BYU regardless of quarterback. Is Utah State a team that you are comfortable stacking up as either a run back or just alone and running it back with a BYU guy?
I have more Bonner on FanDuel where he's, I would say, just a more appropriate price play. On DraftKings, I think you can do it too in stacks. But otherwise, I think you're just looking at run backs primarily.
So of the Utah State guys, I assume Tompkins is the guy we want to talk about. And then in the backfield, you've got, Tyler's getting some serious volume. Do you worry if they fall behind that he's phased out, or do you think he gets enough regardless?
They've just been feeding him no matter what. They got slaughtered in their last game, and Tyler still had 19 carries. Like, they were down immediately in that game. Utah State does not care. They play at like hyper speed too. So it's a team that just has immense play volume. Even if they get down in this game, like with Tyler, I think is going to stay active either way, just because of what they've done already this year. But a guy like Tompkins, there's so much PPR value to him because of their plays per game.
They are high. 83 plays per game. That is really, really fast. So with Tyler, just to circle back to him for a second, you have him certainly behind Goodson and Algier, and he's kind of in that next tier.
Yes.
Okay. And then Tompkins on the outside, cash viable? I
think so.
Okay. We're getting a lot of questions about cash. People building cash lineups on 3 games. I respect that.
I feel for you guys. I am registered for cash. It is a nightmare with the BYU quarterback situation.
It is tough, but I still think, and I assume you're doing this too, you mentioned that it's worth the risk. If you get Hall, great. If you don't, it's not over. You still have a quarterback leading a team that's in the best game, and they are a favorite.
It just makes pivoting hard because unless you want to do a straight pivot down from Hall to Romney, you're likely going to have to seed something at receiver. Nathaniel Dell and Demas playing in the early game doesn't help. So you're like, if you're playing Tompkins and cash and you have to pivot, you all the way down to like Payu is your next best option. So it's just hard.
No doubt about it. It's not ideal. And yes, we're getting questions about, to stay on the news. Certainly you want to be following Matt, but I assume you would say it's really difficult to get information on these teams, and the information you may get could be unreliable. So just stay on Twitter the best you can.
100%.
Yeah, it's very tough. If you have other questions on this slate, drop them in. We got a couple minutes left. Look at us. I'm very, very excited. Are you betting any other game besides Maryland tonight?
I am not.
No, neither am I.
I think I might have taken the over in BYU, actually. Let me look.
Okay, 66. I don't hate that. I didn't do it personally.
If I betted it, would have been on Monday. So I bet most of my games on Monday. And then I usually am like head in the clouds the rest of the week, unless there's like a piece of news or something that comes out.
And I'll let you people know while you look that up. If you are looking to jump on some of these lines because they move throughout the week, watch our podcast, exclusive only content, Betting You. We film it. It's up every Wednesday, me and Matt, and we go through a million games, talk about lines that we're betting, and you get value. Some of these spreads have moved the full point. They've crossed 7, things like that. It can make all the difference. All right, let's get to some questions here. Utah State, would you rather, if say it was a flex, Tyler or Tompkins in cash? Tompkins, I agree. Crazy to go running back at super flex. I would say yes.
I agree with you.
Still sticking to that philosophy, right? Got to go 2 QBs.
What's that?
2 QBs in all lineups, right?
Yes, especially tonight. All the QBs are good.
Yeah, they're even though these games aren't 70 totals across the board, you still have QBs on every team, minus Petrus, who will now go for like 8 TDs. That can really do things. Casey Thompson over 0.5 for rushing TD.
Casey Thompson?
Yeah, I mean, that's not for this slate, but
under.
I want to see what they do tomorrow. They got Oklahoma on deck as well. If not Jaron Hall, then who? So let's just play an if game for a second, Matt. Say we get news. Say Hall is out and we know, and we have time to do some things. What would you do differently on the slate?
I would play Baylor Romney, and I would try to upgrade with the 300 wherever possible. For me right now, I have a nasty 2v2 that I've been just debating really hard. It's with If I play Hall, then I have to play Nathaniel Dell. If I get Romney, I can upgrade to Thompkins. But then if you play the Thompkins Romney, you're banking on like Hall playing. And then the pivot away from like to get back up to Hall, I would have to go down to Payu. So it's a really tough decision for me right now.
Tompkins obviously is the alpha on the outside, but what do you think about Justin McGriff, who is also getting, pretty decent target share each and every game?
He's actually running as the wide receiver too. He hasn't been targeted as much. Brandon Bowling has an insane target rate, even though he's not playing as much. He's actually playing less than Derek Wright as well. But the two receivers on the field for almost every snap are McGriff and Thompkins. So I'm comfortable with McGriff in a punt play situation. I have a ton of them in tournaments.
Going back to the first game for a second, we talked about Brooks versus Prince in the last game. Prince was wildly banged up. Brooks went nuts. Tonight, how do you stack them up? To me, I would lean Brooks, but do you go to the pass catcher and Prince more often, or you lean Brooks as well?
They're so close. I guess I would go with Prince because he has the pass catching upside. But in the first two games of the season, he led them in carries. I think he's just been banged up lately. At the same time, that's a huge question. Like, we don't know how healthy he is. So I would say Brooks is the safer play, Prince slightly more upside.
Are the Romney guys brothers? I have literally no idea.
They are.
Probably. Yeah, who knows? I'm not going to say anything about Utah. I like the Jazz. That's why got Jazz Raz in the name. So let's go Utah Jazz. And as our man, look who stopped in, EMAC. Yes, if you have not signed up, awesemo.com/join. You can get in just for the week, get Matt's projections for tomorrow, ownership, all the tools, his deep dive article, which is the best college football article, bar none in the industry. There are so many big games tomorrow, in addition to the 3-game slate tonight, plus some betting picks. Get in Slack, have that good time. Do you think you'll be, I don't know how many lineups you're playing and whatnot on a 3-game, but like with Goodson, is he in like lock territory, or is he just like a core play?
I played 100 lineups. He is an 85%. So he
right.
isn't exactly 85.
Look at that. You got answers for everything.
Well, it's really easy when you play exactly 100 lineups.
That does make percentages easier to calculate.
Yeah, so if you want to know percentages, I can give them to you exactly.
If you go to Hall, do you think you need to pair him up with someone, or can you just use his dual threat ability and ISO him?
You can. I made a rule in Cruncher: stack every quarterback except Hall.
Okay, so there you go.
If he got stacked, he did. If he didn't, he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, he is the only guy on this slate that, barring some type of ridiculous outlier, has true dual threat ability. Most of these other guys are borderline statues down there.
Yeah, I might be dead on my pivots because I have a lot of him naked. So if I have to make the pivot to Romney, Romney is mobile, but if he's more of a pocket passer, like all of the players that are expensive that you'd pivot from are in the early games. So you won't have pivoting options.
All right, last question before we duck on out of here. Tompkins, Josh Johnson, and Bryn, or Tagovailoa, Demas, and Toon?
The first one.
There you go. Look at this. Good work. Last thing I want to say to everybody, if you are into betting content, Awesemo Odds YouTube channel, head on over there. Me and Matt put out short form videos all the time on college football, on the NFL, me and Josh, and the NBA is going to be starting. Awesemo Odds channel. We would love your support over there as well. Let's go Terps. Good luck on this 3-game slate, everyone. Thanks for stopping in. I'll see you guys all tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time for Live Before Lock, Saturday college football slate. Take care.